Alfred Big Al Menshew. As I stand before you, we are here to validate the history of a great man and a clamper. I met Al, as many of you have in the past, sitting in a field or pasture in the middle of nowhere, listening to his historical oracles, giving him a standing ovation whenever he felt he needed it, which was often, and wondering what the hell have I gotten myself into. My introduction to Al occurred in April 1977 on Warnerville Road in a cattle pen. Although I had always loved history, clampers and Al Menshew took it to a new level. After the initiation, I was made a vigilante and started attending meetings at Al's and his widow Loretta's home in Modesto. What a witty gentleman I found him to be. Al wasn't really loud and boisterous like many of us, but when he spoke in that slow Oklahoma drawl, you listened. Over the past 43 years, I, like many of you, developed a great friendship and admiration for a true gentleman. When I learned that I was going to become a member of the Board of Proctors and then the Sublime, Al, being an ex-Proctor and ex-Sublime, was the first person I told. During those years, I sought out his advice, I listened, and I learned. At this point, I'd like to introduce ex-Sublime Noble Grand Humbug Rick Hilgers, who's attended here today. Al, when he was the Sublime Humbug, brought Rick here into the Board of Proctors, and subsequently Rick became the Sublime himself. So thank you for attending. Thank you for attending. There are many what we call Al-isms out there, and I would like to touch on a few. During a live radio broadcast with ex-NGH Charles Animal McIntyre, Al made the comment, being the Sublime Noble Grand Humbug is kind of like being the Pope. You can deflower virgins and can do all sorts of things. You will find that quote on a future challenge coin that Animal has prepared. During a Graybeard meeting many years ago, the humbug, whose name I shall not mention, wanted to change the date of our doings from the normal third weekend in April and October, so it better suited his schedule. Chapter 58 had proclaimed years earlier on having our doings on the third weekend, so everyone would know when it was and could make plans on attending. As I remember it, when this other Noble Grand Humbug made the suggestion to change the date, Al slowly stood up and said, "Mr. Humbug, over your dead body." He then sat back down, and that ended the discussion. And believe it or not, Al was an ordained minister in the Universal Life Church, which flourished in Modesto in the 70s and 80s. For the paltry sum of $20, you could receive a Doctor of Divinity certificate from the renowned con man, Reverend Kirby Hensley. Al was asked to officiate at many weddings and funerals, and he would proudly exclaim many times that everyone I married is still married, and everyone I buried is still buried. Al was a very honorable and law-abiding man. However, there is a monument off of I-5 just north of here, which was erected by one of our former humbugs who has fallen out of favor and is no longer spoken of by our body. Rumor has it that one dark night in the long ago past, this man's name was chiseled off his monument. I, for one, am not positive who the culprit or culprits were, but one can only imagine. Al Menshew was a recipient of many accolades and awards during his life. There's one award, however, that has not been publicly mentioned, which Al was very proud of. Chapter 58 has had an annual camping trip since 1988, which consists of the humbug and ex-humbugs of Chapter 58, along with one invited guest each. It is known as the Stanislaus Humbugs Invitational Trek, or much better by its acronym, SHIT. As part of this trip, an award is given each year to an individual who did something memorable during the three-day event. It usually involved alcohol, and many of us here today have received this award, which is affectionately known as the dog. Al received the award on the late ex-NGH Gordon Tullis's shit trip in 1994. It had something to do with Al's inability to get in or stay in his cot. The award is presented at the end of the trip as everyone is packing up to go home. The actual award is a ceramic dog with bloodshot eyes and an ice pack on his head. It is mounted on a plaque with all the winners' names attached. The recipient of the dog is required to proudly display the award in their home for a period of 1 year and then gratefully turn it over the following year to the new winner. Al's name will be forever alongside others. In closing, ex-Sublime Noble Grand Humbug Alfred Big Al Menshew will be greatly missed by all, but never forgotten. What say the brethren? Satisfactory. Please.